Hello again, Gills fans. Welcome back to the latest episode of Gills in the Blood TV. It's match preview evening, and as you can see, I'm joined by familiar face, familiar foe, familiar friend of the channel, and personally as well. You'll recognise Graham from the What the Falk podcast, who I join fairly regularly to talk about Gillingham and Sunderland, and 2 yearly to talk about England in football tournaments. Graham, trust you very well.
Yeah, not too bad, mate. Same old, you know me. Don't ask me about the football. Apart from that, I'm absolutely fine.
We tend to say that quite a lot, don't we? So, I mean, I've picked up recently over the last few weeks. Steve Evans has gone. We're winning football matches. We're keeping clean sheets. It's all thoroughly uncomfortable.
Yeah, I don't think I could get used to that either, mate. So fair play.
Right, let's jump straight in. We all know the format. We all know Graham. We all know me. So let's have a look at the current form. Last 6 in the league for Sunderland. Draw, win, win, draw. So 12 points from the last half a dozen available for Alex Neil's men. The Gills, fairly similar, which is not something we've been saying for teams that have been taking double figures points over 6 games for most of this campaign. But for Gills, it's 3 wins, 2 defeats and a single draw. So it's 10 points from the last 18 available for Neil Harris's men. If we break it down further, home and away, 10 points from 18 for Sunderland, 10 points from 18 for the Gills, so fairly similar. Having a look, Graham, at games that you've played recently, games that we've played recently, similar opponents. You recently beat Lincoln 2-0. Sorry, 1-0. We beat them 2-0, sorry. No, you drew with Lincoln, sorry.
We drew 0-0.
Drew 0-0, but should have won about 15-0, looking at the highlights. We won 2-0. You've recently beat Crewe. We've recently beat Crewe. You've recently drew with Charlton. We lost 1-0, goalkeeping error, should have drawn probably at worst. Plenty of clean sheets as well for both sides. I think you've kept 4 in the last 5 and Gills have kept 4 in the last 7. So it doesn't point towards a goal fest. It doesn't point towards being the first game on Quest.
No.
Get your money on a 4-0 now. Graham, your form, obviously you know more about it than I do. So tell me about the last half dozen in more detail.
Kind of weird in a way. You can probably tell by my first word I used there wasn't even a word. It was because Sunderland season feels like that, and it just feels like we're back to where I could have had this conversation with you last year, changed the name of the manager, changed the teams we've played, and I would have said similar. It's so frustrating because I feel like, especially this season, and I think I said it to you on and off the record, it felt a bit different. Young players coming through in Dan Neil being the standout. Obviously, Ross Stewart's not young, but he's only 24, 25. You can see the kind of season he's had. Obviously, Jermaine Defoe came back not that long ago. He's now gone. Dennis Serkin was brought in from Spurs. Callum Doyle was brought in from Man City on loan. And we were playing good, relatively attractive football where we sort of struggle to keep clean sheets, if I'm honest. But I think most football fans are of that opinion where if you win 3-1 or 3-2, it doesn't really matter. But that basically caught up on us. And as people can see, we've fallen out the playoff places and we're now in 7th. So I think at a point, people were saying it was 2 from 3, us, Wigan, Rotherham. And I think most people would have agreed with it. And then we got battered off Rotherham 5-1. We got beat off Sheff Wed. Went through a poor run in October. We came back from that and put together a good run of form, which culminated in a 5-0 win over Sheff Wed, New Year's Eve, I think it was, or just before the end of 2021. And then we just went on another horrible run again. And Lee Johnson's known for being streaky. I think that was his nickname. And that's how his Sunderland career was. And I think him going, I was 100% on board with him. Absolutely no problem with it. We got beat 6-0 off Bolton. People can say what they like about Sunderland fans being arrogant. That's simply not acceptable for any manager at this level of football, being Sunderland. Historically, we've been above this for 100 years. Recently, we haven't been, but you don't lose games 6-0 when you're trying to get promotion. So he agreed with him getting the sack and still do. But we then didn't really seem to have a replacement. So there was a big furore around Roy Keane. And once you mention the name Roy Keane, anyone you bring in is going to be underwhelming. Doesn't matter who you bring in, because it's Roy Keane, especially if you're a Sunderland fan with this history. But in that period of time, we lost games against Cheltenham, we lost against Doncaster. We also kind of had Roy Keane then turn us down and Jermaine Defoe come in, and typical mental Sunderland week. But the truth is, Alex Neil's been, it's boring football. It's not the best. I think he's been quite pragmatic since he's came in, and he has tried to ensure we've kept clean sheets at the back and got goals. And to be fair, I think the performances against Fleetwood and Crewe for 80 minutes were horrendous. But then the last 10 minutes, I think in total we scored 4 goals in those 2 games. And then the performances against Charlton and Lincoln were excellent. We didn't score a goal. So it's kind of weird. We either play really poorly and then nick a goal at the end under Alex Neil, or play really, really well and look like a really good team and can't seem to score a goal. But I think if you took out the results against Cheltenham and Doncaster, which were kind of the in-between of is Roy Keane coming in, then it was Alex Neil and Johnson getting sacked. We basically had a 6-0 against Bolton. Johnson gets sacked. We got beat 2-1 at home against Doncaster, which was Jermaine Defoe's homecoming. Didn't last very long. And then the game after that was a midweek. I think we got beat off Cheltenham, and that's kind of killed us in a way, because you can see, well, Alex Neil's came in, he steadied the ship. We've kept clean sheets. We've looked all right. Some games we've looked really good and not won. Some games have been poor, but found a way to win. And yet we're 7th. But I don't really think that's necessarily Alex Neil's fault. He's came in, he's like the antithesis of Lee Johnson, whereas Lee Johnson will tell you the far end of farting and which way that it blew. Alex Neil will just tell you pretty straight. And you can probably imagine which style I prefer. And I think which style Sunderland fans in the majority probably prefer. But our inability to bring in someone to replace Lee Johnson immediately, and our kind of flirtation with Roy Keane's cost us an awful lot. And I think it's going to be an uphill task, despite not bad form, to get into the playoffs, mate. That's a long-winded answer to a very short question, but
that's good. That's what we want. That's what we want. We want to find out what's going on, because you're in and around it all the time, and we're not. Obviously, we can only go off of Sky Sports, Quest, the news, and all that type of thing, and what we read from guys like yourselves and other Sunderland fan pages, which of course we enjoy doing. I much prefer to do that than do it for the paid media, because I think they don't really care about League One, to be quite honest, and it's all very easy just when you look at match reports and match ratings that everyone gets a 6, the player that made an error gets a 5, and the person that scored the goal gets a 7. That tends to be my sort of approach to it. But you've spoken about Alex Neil, you've spoken about Ross Stewart, and we'll talk about them in a bit more detail in a sec. But you said that we've had this chat in 2021 twice. We probably had this chat in 1920 twice, and we had it in 18-19 twice. And I still remember back to the first game that we played against you at this level when you dropped in, and you came down to our place August 2018, destroyed us 4-1. Were really good, scored really good goals. We took the lead, I think, and after about 30 seconds, you could have beaten us 5, 6, 7, 3 or 4. It was a really weird game, and I said at the time that I'd come out. I don't think I'd ever come out after a 4-1 defeat as happy as I had, because everyone was saying that Gills were decent. If they played like that, they'd be in the top half, and I think that's where my sort of affiliation with Sunderland fans sort of started, because generally you are a good bunch, and you know why you're here. At what point though do we have to say Sunderland are now a League One club that are where they belong, rather than Sunderland are a big fish in a little League One pond? Because it's now season 4 or 5. Season 4, and it looks more likely that you'll miss out than you will go up, unfortunately. And even if you get in the top 6, we know your recent record in the playoffs. So at what point do Sunderland's fans start after just saying we are a League One football club, unfortunately?
I think where I would say the big difference is, I always think I'm very biased, but the fan base far above a level of League One. However, you've got to look at not just the performance of the team sort of on the pitch over the past 4 seasons, going into potentially 5, where it simply hasn't been good enough for automatic promotion or to get at the playoffs. But I think everything stems from the top, which you will probably well know with Gillingham, and I think a few fans at League One level. And League One level tends to have those more balmy stories of terrible owners for a reason, because it's League One football clubs. We've got a bloody Netflix documentary about it. We hope that we'd leave that behind. You can say first couple of years down to what you saw in Netflix, bad ownership, bad recruitment, stupid recruitment, not just bad. And then we've obviously got Kira Louis-Dreyfus, the billionaire that came in, who took over the club. He owns 41% of it. The other three guys own more. Depends whether you think they're a collective or whether you think they're separate. You can
this is
probably
still,
guess.
for Gillingham fans that are not sure, this is still Stuart Donald and the other bloke that was on the Netflix series.
Methven and Juan Sartori. Juan Sartori is part of that trio, or was previously. Now he's separate. He was part
But
of
the
it.
thing is that when we spoke before the game in October in Kent, you was very upbeat about the new lad and how it was his club, and then it all seemed to come out afterwards that it wasn't quite his club. So how did the Sunderland fan base react to that? That it weren't quite as rosy as perhaps you'd all hoped in the first 3 months of the season?
A lot of anger, especially when it came out that the form wasn't good, because most people know if you're winning games, you can almost turn a blind eye to it, probably wrongly, because you could need to be in the right place. But he's very much KLD, Kira Louis-Dreyfus is very much admitting that he might have got messages misconstrued, but that he is the person at the forefront of this football club. My worry is, yep, he owns 41%. And even if you look at these other people separately, Juan Sartori, who bought the club, had shares in the club for £1, never here. Haven't seen him, don't know what he does.
I was going to say, that's not a name I've heard. I know, you know, the other two, obviously, because of the Netflix series as well, but obviously they are more apparent on social media and in amongst Sunderland blogs, vlogs, channels, podcasts, etc., etc.
And there's also the fact that Charlie resigned from the board of directors, yet keeps turning up randomly at away games where, you know, away fans, it hasn't been a home game. And that all came out. And for me, I can't prove it. And I don't know how I could. But there's obviously some involvement there, which I'm not comfortable with, because I think, to go back to the original question of, you know, at what point do we become a League One club? I think in hindsight, probably since the day we dropped in this division, because of the way that the board's acted, the way that the ownership has acted. If you act like a League One club, you become a League One club, and guess where Sunderland are? League One. And for me, we've acted the same the whole way through. And even if look, let's take KLD at face value and say that Methven, Donald and Sartori, yes, they've got shares in it, but they've got nothing to do with it. He spearheads all of it. They don't even say boo to a goose. Let's imagine that. The situation in January, now don't get me wrong, I was fully behind the signing of Jermaine Defoe. That didn't work out. It's a shame. I'm massively disappointed because he's my favourite player that ever existed, but he simply wasn't up to it, and he knew it, and that's fine. But you look at the whole furore around his return, you look at the mess they made with the Roy Keane situation. I mean, he's smiling, he's winking, he's saying, oh, you know, don't know about leaving. On ITV, Ian Wright's laughing his head off, and you're thinking, well, obviously he's having a chat, and then all of a sudden he's not there, and Alex Neil's the next day, and they say, well, that's always the choice.
Is it true? Did I hear a rumour that it was because he only got offered a 6-month contract, and that's the reason Roy Keane turned it down, or is there more to it than that, and is that just social media talk?
I can't confirm it, but that's what I've heard, yes, because Alex Neil's on a rolling contract.
That's it. That's the phrase I was looking for, which essentially means that it's monthly, and we'll see where we are at the end of the season.
They also had a bit of a chat around second interviews, and latterly they came out and said there was never a second interview for Roy Keane. I'm not surprised. Imagine trying to say to Roy Keane, "Do you want a second interview, mate?" But they made a mess of it. I mean, Speakman obviously is head of recruitment. He was one of KLD's, and man, he was brought in to recruit, include management and all that kind of stuff, and it was just a mess. And we wasted 3 games with a lad called Mike Dodds and Michael Proctor, who are quite clearly youth team coaches, and barely that. They're still learning their trade. You know, you can't expect them to spearhead a reaction to a 6-0 defeated Bolton and get a sort of automatic promotion. But that's the long and short of it. I think they made that much of a mess of the managerial search. I agree with transfer being sacked. I'm happy with Alex Neil. The middle bit was just a total mess. A total mess.
Similar to where we were with Steve Evans, because Paul Scally since has come out and said he wished he'd got rid of him 3 months ago. Well, then why didn't you? Because there was the link to Stevenage in December. Mm-hmm. There's rumours going around that Steve Evans wanted to go to Stevenage. There's rumours going around that Stevenage went in because they knew Paul Scally and Steve Evans and probably Paul Rayner had fallen out. So why did we not let it happen and then give the new man, whether that was Neil Harris or someone else at the time, a full transfer window, rather than waiting until start of January and then bringing in an interim manager for 3 or 4 games that was only meant to be 1 game, and then appointing a new manager 11 o'clock transfer deadline day. the thing is, the sacking's always a good decision or a bad decision, but you never really know if it is the correct decision until the replacement comes in.
Yeah, and I think for me, don't get me wrong, people were saying, "Oh, are you disappointed with Alex Neil?" No, I was disappointed it wasn't Roy Keane and the mess that they had on. I'm actually fine with Alex Neil. I think he's a really good manager. I think he's a great coup at this level, and I love the way that he speaks. And I think he's probably the right personality for this club, and probably above League One in terms of his qualities that he's shown at other clubs. So I think, you know, I've got to be happy with that. But if their choice, as they said, was Alex Neil 48 hours after they'd appointed sacked Lee Johnson, why wasn't he in there? Because if Roy Keane was never mentioned, no one would have given a crap. We wouldn't have wasted 2 weeks. And the problem being, we are clinging on to a playoff place by a point here or there. If we brought Alex Neil in and got a point, even a point against Doncaster, and then beaten Cheltenham away or whatever it is, you're 4 points better off.
Mm-hmm.
And 4 points has us 4th, 5th, and you're going, right, okay, good run and get into the playoffs. Not, oh my God, can we please get in the playoffs? And at the minute, the teams that are above us are in really good form. You know, Sheff Wed's in good form, Plymouth are in good form. It's not just about us winning games. And the problem being is we don't always do that. We slip up. We slipped up against Charlton and Lincoln, even though we played well. So we're going to have a really good end of the season. And it all points to, again, the boardroom being an absolute mess. And even though it's technically changed, I don't know whether it has enough for my liking, but let's say it has. Sunderland have been a League One club since the minute they dropped in this division because of the way that the people at the top who are governing decisions have acted. And that includes a whole lot of them for me.
That's fair enough. Maybe it's an inside and an outside perspective. Obviously, you're in and around it, like we've already mentioned. So I suppose it's probably a question that gets asked more from people that are not Sunderland fans, because we see you historically as a big club, as a Premier League club, as a Championship club. If you go back to when I was growing up in the 90s, Kevin Phillips, Noel Quinn finishing 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th in the Premier League. Roy Keane obviously involved late 2000s, that type of thing. So maybe it's a question that gets answered differently from non-Sunderland fans. I just wanted to get your perspective on it. I did ask, I've written down, let's talk about Alex Neil. You've done that for me, so that's brilliant. I mean, you've said he come in, he steadied the ship. It was no wins in the first 3, but you're 5 unbeaten. So he's obviously having a positive effect, whether it's enough. But again, it's probably similar to Ipswich. I've listened to podcasts over the last couple of weeks. Ipswich, they say, are the team that's in such form that they could be the ones that gate crash the top 6. But you have to find, if to say you and Ipswich were to get in, you've then got to find 2 clubs to drop out of form. I don't think there's 4 teams or 2 teams, in that top 6 or between 3rd and 6th that are going to play bad enough over the final 6-7 games to accommodate 2 clubs that are going to come in from the outside. And then you've got to chuck in Wickham into the mix as well.
Yeah,
I mean, we've still got to play a lot of them, unfortunately, which is not great from our point of view because we've just got ourselves above the line. But that's for another week. But the Loch Ness Drogba, I know you're a big fan, not as big a fan as you are of Jane Defoe, and we get that. He's had a very good season.
Yeah.
I had a look today, 22 in 43 games in all competitions, which is a brilliant return. And we've had chats previously about Charlie Wyke and what he did and he didn't offer and what Ross Stewart could or couldn't offer. And I think he stepped up to the plate. The numbers are there for everyone to see. Are you slightly concerned, though, that he's not scored in his last 4? And I'm going to do inverted commas. He's only got 4 in his last 13, but they came in a group of 3 games. It was a goal, and then a double. So there's essentially 10 games in the last 13 where he's not found the net. Is that another concern running into the final 6-7 games of the campaign? Because he is your main striker and strikers are paid to score goals.
It's funny you mentioned that because I wouldn't have known that. And that's testament to Ross Stewart, truth be told, because he brings so much to the side without just the goals. I think that I'm actually quite taken back that he hasn't scored that many because 2 of them would have been penalties as well against Wigan. Mm-hmm. So if we're talking goals from open play, that's not very many. But Ross Stewart is just so far above this level. Like, we're not going to hang on to him. Mm-hmm. Even if we go up, I think we'd struggle. Norwich are looking at him. Swansea are looking at him. He's got in the Scotland squad now. His mum follows me on Twitter, so I will beg her, but I don't know how much of a say she has. Fingers crossed she'll...
Sure, she's watching.
I hope so, mate. I hope so. But he's massive. It doesn't concern me too much. I've got full faith in Roscoe. He's just... There was a striker I watched a few years ago, not similar in style, but you know when you watch a player at this level and you go miles above this level, miles above it. And when we first dropped down into this division, Josh Maja looked that from a Sunderland perspective, because
scored in that first game against us that we spoke about earlier. Yep.
He did, and that was his, I think, the 4th game in a row that he'd scored at the time. And Madger looked just a miles better player than the level he was at. A player I've seen that season when I think someone said, who's as good as Madger? Who's a player that you would bring in alongside him? Yada yada. Before January happened, and then the boy from Barnsley. Oh my God, his name's completely gone up my head. Wales International, completely gone up my head now. Kiefer Moore, of course. There we go. The name completely went up my head there. And Kiefer Moore, I think they came to the stadium like on like a Tuesday, Wednesday night, and it was peeing down with rain. We beat them 4-2. It was a much closer game. We went 3-0 up, and then they got it back to 3-2. And Kiefer Moore spearheaded everything. And every time he was on the ball, he was holding it up. He was laying it off. He was strong in the air. He just looked like a player that you were like, he's high level championship. He's so far above this. And when someone sees him, he's gone. That's where Ross Stewart's at. His holder play is brilliant. I think there was a goal against Crewe. Just to touch on probably why I haven't noticed his lack of goals so much as his play off the ball, and also the way he brings people into play. We had Crewe at home and it was 0-0 5 minutes ago. We won 2-0. And Dan Neil come on, who was dropped for a while because he's looked a bit burnt out. He's getting back in the squad recently. Gets the ball, shifts it forward, spots Ross Stewart in the box, plays the ball in towards him, and Ross Stewart pulls 4 Crewe players completely out the way. Those 4 Crewe players go with him, so he just like holds it, lays it off. Dan Neil, 20 yards out, top corner, 1-0, game 1. And that's what Ross Stewart is. I think people know how good he is. And I don't know, like, same with Kiefer Moore. Sunderland in 2018, I think it was when we first came down, could not handle Kiefer Moore because he was just too good for the players that were at this level. At the time, it would have been Flanagan and Baldwin. He was just too good for them. It just turned out that we had McGeady and Madger and Catamol in the team then, and we could score more goals than then. But they got 2 goals. I think one came from Kiefer Moore. He set the other one up. And I think throughout that season, you've seen that defences could not deal with him, and defences in the Championship struggle a bit. Ross Stewart looks the same. I also think probably he hasn't massively been helped by the couple of games where we played Defoe up front with him. It didn't really work. And it really pains me to say this, that Defoe didn't work, because I swore down it would, but sometimes you're wrong. It didn't work, and we're a better side with Ross Stewart up front on his own. But I suppose to answer your question, no, it doesn't worry me too much, because Ross Stewart's far and wide our best player, and if he's not scoring, he's helping someone else to put the ball in the back of the net.
Fair enough. Another good insight as well for us Gillingham fans. Right, and more immediately then on to Saturday itself. We're very early in the week recording, aren't we? So there's no official team news, press conferences done yet. From a Gills perspective, we'll have no Danny Lloyd, we'll have no Alex McDonald, we'll have no Robbie McKenzie. Stuart O'Keefe got a whack on the knee in the win at Accrington last Saturday, our captain, so fingers crossed he's available, but I'm sure he's 50-50 at the moment. Mustafa Carriel, Gerald Satola had the same. If Stuart O'Keefe's fit, for me, Neil Harris picks the same 11, because you can't beat continuity and consistency in selection, and that's proven in our results since he came in, and the dozen games that he's taken charge of where we've earned 18 points, having taken 19 from 28 games previously. It's just a staggering turnaround. So for me, the Gills team would be Aaron Chapman, Connor Masterson, Max Amer, Jack Tucker, Ryan Jackson, Stuart O'Keefe, Ollie Lee, David Tutonda, Ben Thompson, Charlie Kelman, Verdane Oliver. What is Alex Neil's 11 going to be? 3 p.m. Saturday afternoon.
Obviously, as you say, we're speaking early in the week, but as far as I'm aware, nothing's changed too much apart from Jermaine Defoe retiring. We haven't played, obviously, we didn't play on Saturday. We played the week before, which was Lincoln, which was 0-0. We've gone with like a back 3 recently, and it's a very weird back 3 because we're basically playing a midfielder on the right-hand side, a centre-half in the middle, and a left-back on the left-hand side. But it's kind of worked. We've kept clean sheets, so
Southgate to blame for that. But we like Gareth, so we won't slag him off. It's others that get on our nerves.
Big Gareth fan. I think we'll start with Anthony Patterson in goal, who's became the number 1, and rightly so. Obviously, we brought in Hoffman from Bayern, and Lee Burge was our number 1 last year. Lee has had some issues with his heart due to COVID. He's just getting back on the training pitch. He's okay, I think he had an enlarged heart or something. But Patterson got recalled from Notts County and played a game, and Alex Neil's picked him number 1. I don't think he'll change. I don't think he should. He's probably been our player of the month, him or Patrick Roberts maybe. I think you'll keep the back three. I think you'll keep with Winchester, Bailey Wright, and Dennis Serkin across the back. So a midfielder that's played right back mainly this season, alongside Bailey Wright, which people know is an out and out centre half, and Dennis Serkin is an attacking left back. But he's fit into that sort of side on that side. Then the midfield, I think Daniel will continue to play. I think he's trying to protect him, but he came back into the team and played relatively well. Alongside him, I think you'll see Luke O'Nien in like a number 10 position. First time he's been in that position for a while, probably ever since he's came here. Scored on his return after 4 months against Fleetwood and's played there since. Don't see that changing. Then you've probably got Lyndon Gooch on the right-hand side. He's got his doubters. I'm one of them. But if you're playing a three at the back, you want someone who's going to track back, and Lyndon Gooch will work hard. He certainly doesn't lack an effort, so I can't criticise him for that. And it seems like Jack Clark from Spurs, former Leeds player, is the choice on the left-hand side. He's very much not a defensive left wing back at all. He's very attacking, but he's one of our most creative, so I think he'll stay there. You'll have Ross Stewart up front, and I think Patrick Roberts, who is by far and wide our best player against Lincoln, and looks like the Patrick Roberts we hoped we'd signed would be in like maybe he's like shadow striker, I suppose you prefer. The other option you'd have is Corey Evans versus Jay Matete. I really don't rate Corey Evans in any way, shape, size, or form. Sunderland fans might think I'm being dramatic here, but he's up there with one of the worst midfielders we've ever had, and he's our captain. I don't think he offers us anything. I don't think he's got much leadership. I think his passes are very safe and cowardly, sideways and backwards. And I want a midfielder that's going to stamp themselves on the game. Jim Matete brought him in from Fleetwood. People really like him, and I think that's more down to what Sunderland fans like. He gets stuck in, he tries to probe, he tries to get forward, he tries to pass. He misplaces about 4 or 5 passes a game, but he's 19, 20. I think he just turned 20. He's going to make mistakes, and I'll always much prefer someone of that age who's willing to get up and go and keep trying to play his game that he wants to play, even if he makes mistakes, especially if they're young. Corey Evans is in his 30s. I don't think he adds very much at all. Maybe I'm being really harsh, but I just don't rate him. I think Alex Neil will play Corey Evans. I would hope it's going to be Matete over him if he plays that position. Outside of that, our bench last game was Hoffman, Trihume, Matete, Defoe, Embleton, Diaku, Callum Doyle. He might bring Diaku when he's came off the bench past 2 games instead of maybe Gooch. I don't think he will, because I think you want the protection and defence. And I can't see Embleton getting in ahead of Dan Neil or Patrick Roberts or O'Nien. The only other person that could come back, and I hope he does, because he, outside of Ross Stewart, probably is our best player, Alex Pritchard. He rolled his knee at, I want to say, Charlton. He's been out for a while. We thought it was going to be 8 to 9 weeks. It's less than that, but they haven't put any time frame on it. So it wouldn't surprise me if Pritchard appeared in the squad. And if Pritchard appears in the squad, that's a big, big lift for us, because he's another player like Ross Stewart that's just above this level. As his history tells you, really.
Fingers crossed he's not fitter than Gills fans. It's just the bench.
It's pretty good.
This is, again, like we've said, you're a League One club. You've been here 4 seasons, but there's still levels, and it's absolutely frightening from a Gillingham fan perspective when you hear that the bench, because no disrespect to us, they all walk into our 11 every day of the week, and on a Sunday, and that's the difference, isn't it? Between, and it has been probably one of the strongest League Ones. And weirdly, that's probably helped us out, that the gap between the top 10 and the bottom 10 is so big now, because for us, it means that the safety mark of 50 is probably going to drop by 5 or 6 points this season, which ultimately could keep us up. But final question before we let you go, the dreaded score prediction. I've written mine down. So
are you going first or am I going first?
You can go first, because I've got mine in ink.
You always do us at the stadium. And by do us, I mean just shithouse to draw, don't you? What was the last one? 2-2.
2-2 behind closed doors, last minute equaliser. Your keeper left it to your centre half, and your centre half left it to your keeper, and Jordan Graham rounded him and smashed it in. Season right. Before was the last game before lockdown, Mika Mandron masterclass. And also the cup game where John McLaughlin decided to lob it in his own net. I think you've only beaten us once at the Stadium of Light since you came back down. That was the 4-2 game when Will Grigg scored 2 penalties.
Oh, that's right. And I was watching Brian Cox giving a lovely chat on science that night, and missed Lee Cattermole scoring a goal because Cattermole scored that night. We're pretty good at home. Our home form's decent. It's our away form throughout the season. When you you know, at the end of the season, when you look at where do we mess up, when you take out the current form, the early season form, you'll say, well, the home form's all right. The away form's knackered us. So, and we've got to win. We've got to win as many games as we can. But I don't see it happening. You're in good form. Things feel a little bit meh. It's the only way I can describe it around Sunderland at the minute, because it's like, oh, done it again. Brilliant. Fab. There's been a fiver taken off season ticket prices next season. Brilliant. That'll really help with the gas bill.
Which is going up.
Uh-huh.
Cheers, Boris and friends.
Yeah, cheers, Rishi, mate. I just think there'll be a bland 1-1. I wanted to say 2-2, but like you said before, none of us are scoring that many, but none of us are conceding many. I think both defenses, based on your history throughout the season.
1-1.
Oh, wow. Yeah, I'll stick with you then. We'll both say 1-1. I think I just think we'll probably both tighten up our defenses, but we've both used our lower down the league. So obviously there's holes there to be picked. I think we've got one of the worst goals against records in that part of the table. So obviously you can see our defense has got ability to be picked apart as well. But I don't think any of us possess the ability at the minute, based on the way that we're both playing, to score more than the one at the minute. And I think you'll probably take the draw. Probably not. Well, it's not a good result for us. But
a draw would be huge for us. We've said we've got to pick up. I mean, I think Accrington last Saturday, Sheffield Wednesday the Saturday before. I think that's the first time that we've taken. It's certainly the first time we've beaten a team, I think, that started the game in the top half, and obviously taking a point off a team that's effectively in the playoffs is huge. The last 4 points from 6. So if we can nick another point, we can look at other games. What we're doing now is obviously I think we're looking at the games running out as quick as possible now, rather than before. We were thinking how many have we got left to get ourselves out of trouble. Now it's how quick can they run out so that we don't fall back into trouble. So, but we shall see. We'll still be talking come 5 o'clock, whatever happens. Graham, it's been a real pleasure. And next season, probably, hopefully, fingers crossed from our point of view. Probably not much from you, but it's been a pleasure, as always.
Always.
Gills fans, Sunderland fans, go and check out Graham. I will put his podcast description in the notes at the bottom of this video. Come and join us on YouTube and comment. YouTube, not YouTube, on YouTube. And that's a train channel. You don't want to watch that. It's not so good.
Is that like Parlour?
Something like that. If you're a Sunderland fan or if you're a Gills fan, let us know what you think your 11 be. Let us know what you think the score will be. Please continue to subscribe to Gills in the Blood TV. Please continue to subscribe to What the Falk podcast. We're also on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. Not travelling north, unfortunately, at the weekend to the Stadium of Light. But if you are, enjoy it. It's a wonderful place to watch your football. Graham might not agree so much currently, but it is. It really is. It's one of the best stadiums in England, let alone League One. I'll be back Monday to look back on the game. Will be a full Monday review, having watched the full match replay. But until then, enjoy the rest of your week and up the Gills.